You close your eyes and something returns. A face. A room. A place you haven't been in years. And there is no color in it. Psychology has been asking about this for decades. The images your sleeping mind assembles are drawn from the same archive as your waking memories. And that archive was shaped by what you watched, what you absorbed, what the world looked like before you knew to question it. Your generation may dream differently than the one before it, not because your brain is built differently, but because the visual world that trained your dreaming mind was not the same world. There is a mechanism here. It is more layered than it first appears. Welcome to Sleepy Science. The part worth holding is this. Your dreaming mind is not broken when it loses color. It may simply be replaying the world it was given. That is where tonight begins. Close your eyes and let your breathing settle. You're somewhere between what you remember and what you're still making sense of. Let the edges of that soften. And now we begin. The question of why some people dream in black and white begins with an unexpected finding: a generational divide. Studies examining dreamers across age groups found that older adults who grew up before color television report significantly higher rates of achromatic dreaming. Research published in the journal Perception found that individuals raised on black and white television dreamed achromatically far more often than younger adults. Among adults over 60, reports of achromatic dreams approached 1 in 4. For younger adults, the figure dropped to around 4 to 8%. The gap suggested something systematic, a pattern tied to what the eyes learned to see in early life. That is the central question tonight follows. Why does the medium of the waking world shape the palette of the sleeping one? To understand why media exposure might color or drain color from the dreaming mind, it helps to understand how the brain constructs visual experience during sleep. During REM sleep, the visual cortex becomes highly active, often more active than during quiet wakefulness. The brain generates internal imagery without any external input. Neuroimaging research has shown that the visual cortex, the fusiform face area, and the parahippocampal place area, regions responsible for processing faces, objects, and scenes in waking life, all fire during REM sleep in patterns that closely resemble the patterns they produce when actually seeing those things. The brain is not remembering. It is reconstructing. And what it reconstructs is shaped by the templates it has practiced most. Color processing in the waking brain relies on specialized cells called cone cells. 3 types, each sensitive to different wavelengths of light. These signals are processed through a cascade of neural stages before reaching the visual cortex, where color is experienced as a quality of the world rather than a property of light. But color in dreams does not rely on the retina at all. When you dream in color, the brain generates those color signals internally. Research using positron emission tomography has confirmed that the color area of the visual cortex, known as V4, is active during vivid REM dreaming. Whether this activation produces color depends on what chromatic templates the cortex has stored from a lifetime of visual experience. The first systematic scientific study of dream color was published in 1942. Researchers at the time found that the majority of dream reports contained little or no color. Most dreamers described their dreams as colorless, gray, or simply unspecified. This finding went largely unchallenged until the early 2000s, when Eva Mergen, a researcher at the University of Dundee, began comparing dream reports across age groups and found something that recontextualized the earlier data entirely. The 1942 dreamers were not reporting colorlessness because dreams are naturally achromatic. They were reporting what they had been trained to see. The era's media landscape had given them a visual grammar written in gray. The Merzen study, published in 2008 in Consciousness and Cognition, surveyed two groups, those under 25 and those over 55, asking about dream color, media habits, and childhood exposure to black and white versus color film and television. Among older participants who grew up primarily with black and white media, 60% reported sometimes dreaming in black and white. Among younger participants, only 14% reported the same. When the researchers broke down the groups further by proportion of childhood black and white viewing, the correlation strengthened. The more hours a person had spent as a child absorbing a monochromatic visual world, the more likely they were to generate achromatic imagery in sleep. Decades later, the childhood visual environment left a template the dreaming mind had not fully overwritten. Why would childhood exposure matter more than adult exposure? The answer points toward a concept called the critical period, a window in early development when sensory systems are especially plastic and shaped by experience. During these periods, the visual cortex wires itself according to what it consistently encounters, forming foundational templates that structure visual processing for the rest of life. Research on animals raised with reduced visual complexity showed that the visual cortex literally failed to develop pathways for processing what it had never seen. In humans, the equivalent process is subtler but present. What the eyes see most during early development shapes what the brain expects to see, including in dreams. The idea that early visual experience leaves lasting neural traces is supported by work on congenitally blind individuals and those who lose vision later in life. Research published in Psychological Science found that people blind from birth report no visual imagery in dreams at all. Those who became blind before age 5 also tend to report little or no visual dream content. But those who lost vision after age 5, after the critical period for visual memory consolidation had begun, often retain visual dreaming for decades after losing sight. The visual templates acquired during those early years remain accessible to the dreaming brain long after the input that created them is gone. What the visual cortex absorbs in early development is a stored library the sleeping brain can draw on independently of any ongoing visual experience. Color processing is surprisingly localized in the brain. The area known as V4, located in the ventral visual stream, is the primary region dedicated to color processing. Damage to V4 produces a condition called achromatopsia, the complete loss of color perception, leaving the world appearing entirely in shades of gray while all other aspects of vision remain intact. People with achromatopsia describe the world as looking like a bad black and white photograph. When these individuals dream, their reports are overwhelmingly achromatic. Their brains lack the active color processing architecture needed to generate color in waking life, and that same deficit manifests in sleep. The V4 pathway must be functional and well practiced for color to appear in the dreaming mind's reconstruction of a visual world. Not all achromatic dreaming reflects a deficit. The sleeping brain undergoes significant changes in regional activity across sleep stages, and color experience in dreams shifts accordingly. During NREM sleep, the lighter stages, reports of vivid color are rare. As REM sleep deepens across the night, color reports become more frequent. Researchers analyzing dream journals and waking reports have found that the richest, most chromatic dreaming tends to occur in the late REM episodes, the long stretches of vivid dreaming that cluster in the final hours of a sleep period. Early in the night, when REM episodes are brief and shallow, dreams are often described as fragmentary and colorless. The quality of color in dreams is partly a function of how deeply and how long REM sleep has established itself. The relationship between media and dreaming extends well beyond color. Researchers studying the media incorporation hypothesis have found consistent evidence that waking visual consumption shapes dream content in measurable ways. Studies involving regular video game players found they were significantly more likely to dream in first-person perspective than non-gamers. Research following smartphone adoption found increases in dreams involving digital interfaces. A large-scale dream diary study published in Dreaming, a journal of the American Psychological Association, tracked media-derived characters and settings across more than 5,000 dream reports and found that approximately 30% of dream content contained recognizable elements from film, television, or digital media encountered within the prior week. What the waking mind consumes, the sleeping mind processes, weaving it into whatever world it builds in the dark. The color of memory, as distinct from the color of ongoing perception, connects directly to the dream color question. Research on color memory has found that people do not store color as a high-fidelity photograph. Instead, colors are remembered in a softened, averaged, and often desaturated form. Peripheral colors, those of things not directly attended to, are remembered poorly or not at all. The palette available to the dreaming brain is not drawn from raw visual input, but from color-coded memories, which are already impoverished versions of the original experience. In a world dominated by black and white media during childhood, the memory system may have stored a visual grammar in which the absence of color was not an absence at all, but simply the shape of how the world looked. The transition from black and white to color media in the United States created genuinely different visual environments for different birth cohorts. Black and white television dominated from the late 1940s through the late 1960s. Color television ownership crossed 50% of American households in 1972. A child born in 1950 spent their most visually formative years in a household where the dominant visual medium was black and white. A child born in 1970 had a different experience entirely. These represent genuinely different visual environments during the years when the visual cortex is most plastic, most actively building the templates that will structure all future visual processing, including the visual processing that happens in sleep. Film played a parallel role to television in shaping the visual grammar of earlier generations. Cinema was predominantly black and white from its inception through the 1960s, when color became both technically reliable and economically accessible. For audiences who grew up attending films regularly in the 1940s and 1950s, the movies represented the most immersive visual experience available. far more vivid than any domestic media. The visual world of those films, shot in careful monochromatic light and shadow, was processed with the full engagement of the visual system. That level of attentional absorption is precisely the condition under which the deepest and most durable visual templates are formed. What is absorbed with full attention is what the dreaming mind most reliably draws on when it later builds its own world from the inside. The hippocampus plays a central role in both memory consolidation and dream content generation, helping explain how early visual experience continues to influence dreaming across a lifetime. The hippocampus binds together the elements of episodic memories, the people, places, colors, and emotions of specific experiences into coherent, retrievable units. During sleep, the hippocampus replays recently acquired memories and integrates them with older stored material in a process called systems consolidation. Research using intracranial recording in patients with implanted electrodes has detected precise hippocampal replay of prior visual experiences during sleep. The visual characteristics of early life memories, including their color or lack of color, are encoded with the same specificity as the content itself. One of the more counterintuitive findings in dream color research is that the ability to dream in color appears to be preserved even in some individuals with color blindness, suggesting that dream color is not simply a replay of visual experience, but a partially independent construction. People with red-green color blindness show characteristic shifts in dream palette. Their most vivid dream colors tend toward blue and yellow, consistent with their intact color channels. But they do report dreaming in color. This implies that the dreaming brain draws on available chromatic processing capacity, whatever is intact, and generates the richest color it can with the tools available. The dream is always reaching for the most vivid version of the world it can reconstruct from what it has. The question of whether historical dreamers, people who lived and dreamed before the photographic era, dreamed in color has no direct answer, but the indirect evidence is suggestive. Ancient dream texts, including the dream tablets found at the temple of Asclepius in ancient Greece and Assyrian dream records in the British Museum, contain numerous references to specific colors as significant elements of dream content. Red garments, golden light, white animals. These appear consistently as meaningful dream features across multiple ancient cultures. The prevalence of color in pre-photographic dream literature suggests that chromatic dreaming is the brain's natural default when given a richly colored visual environment, and that achromatic dreaming, for much of the 20th century, represented a departure from that default. Research on the role of emotional arousal in dream vividness provides another dimension to the color story. Emotionally significant memories, encoded during periods of heightened arousal when the amygdala is active, are consistently recalled with more sensory detail, including more vivid color. This reflects the amygdala's influence on hippocampal memory encoding, strengthening the binding of contextual details during emotionally charged experiences. In dreaming, the amygdala remains highly active during REM sleep. Dreams that incorporate emotionally charged memories tend to be reported as more vivid, more detailed, and more chromatic than those drawing on neutral memories. The color intensity of a dream may therefore function, in part, as a signal of the emotional charge of the material being processed. The role of light in shaping dream color connects to a broader phenomenon: the way the visual system calibrates itself to the statistical properties of the environment it inhabits. Researchers studying color constancy, the ability to perceive a surface as the same color under different lighting conditions, have found that this calibration depends on accumulated experience. The brain learns what certain colors look like under certain conditions by processing millions of examples across a lifetime. When a person's visual environment is systematically desaturated, as it would be in a childhood dominated by black and white media, the calibration is built around that environment. The result is a visual system whose baseline expectation of the world, including the reconstructed world of dreaming, is oriented toward a less chromatic range. Not everyone who grew up with black and white media dreams in black and white, and not everyone who grew up with color media dreams in full color. Individual variation is substantial. Among the moderating factors is what researchers call visual imagery vividness, a stable trait measuring how vivid and detailed a person's internal visual representations tend to be. People who score high on vividness measures tend to report more chromatic dreams regardless of their media environment. Those who score low tend toward less vivid imagery. This trait has a meaningful genetic component, though it is also influenced by practice. Individuals who regularly engage in visual imagination exercises show increased vividness over time. The dreaming mind is not entirely at the mercy of what it was given. Photography's role in shaping visual culture preceded television by nearly a century, and the black and white photograph was the dominant mode of personal and public visual documentation from the 1840s through the 1960s. For most people born before 1960, the archived visual world was largely monochromatic. Memory does not only store what is directly experienced, it also stores what is remembered about what was experienced. The photographs and visual records that accumulated alongside lived experience gradually shaped it. A person whose family history existed visually in a monochromatic archive may have internalized a visual grammar that associated memory itself with the absence of color. And the dreaming brain draws heavily on memory. What memory looks like shapes what the dream looks like in return. Dream researchers have developed several methodological approaches to studying dream color, each with its own strengths. Self-report studies rely on dreamers recalling and describing their dreams, which introduces memory bias. Vivid, emotionally charged dreams are overrepresented. Laboratory sleep studies using polysomnography allow researchers to wake participants at precisely the right moment during REM sleep and collect immediate reports, reducing memory distortion significantly. These immediate reports show higher rates of color dream experience than delayed self-reports, suggesting that color information is lost when dreams are not recorded immediately upon waking. Diary studies, maintained over extended periods, capture a broader range of dream experience but are subject to observer effects, with participants who keep dream journals often reporting progressively more vivid and detailed dreams over time. The role of sleep deprivation in dream color provides an unexpectedly practical data point. When people are sleep deprived and then allowed to sleep freely, they experience what is called REM rebound, a large increase in the proportion of sleep spent in REM, as if the brain is compensating for what was lost. Dreams during REM rebound periods are consistently reported as more vivid, more emotionally intense, and more chromatic than dreams during normal sleep. This suggests that the color-generating capacity of the dreaming brain is resource-dependent. It requires sufficient depth and duration of REM to express itself fully. Practices that cut REM short, whether by alarm clocks, alcohol, or late-night stimulation, tend to reduce dream vividness and color in both self-reports and laboratory studies. The conditions of sleep shape the qualities of what happens inside it. Cross-cultural variation in dream color reporting adds another layer to the picture. Researchers comparing dream reports from participants in Japan, Germany, India, and the United States have found meaningful differences in rates of chromatic dreaming that do not map neatly onto generational differences alone. Cultural practices around visual attention, the social value placed on interior imagery, and differing norms around dream reporting may all contribute. In some cultural contexts, dreams are considered meaningful communications from ancestors or the divine, and are recalled with great care and detail. People who place cultural value on attending to and recalling dreams tend to report more vivid dream experiences, including more color. Whether this reflects greater vividness in the dreams themselves or greater attention in recall is a question that remains genuinely open. The technology of color in film and television is not a simple on-off switch. Early color processes in cinema, such as two-strip Technicolor used in the 1920s and 1930s, reproduced a limited range of colors with characteristic shifts. Reds were more vivid, blues were muted, and certain greens were nearly absent. Three-strip Technicolor, introduced in the mid-1930s, expanded the range but still produced an artificial palette distinct from natural color vision. Early color television also had characteristic color casts that diverged from natural experience. People who grew up with these early color technologies were given a chromatic visual grammar that was real but artificial, a version of color the dreaming mind absorbed and stored in its own distinct form, separate from both natural vision and monochromatic media. What the first 25 facts suggest, taken together, is that the palette of the dreaming mind is not a fixed property of the sleeping brain. It is a product of what the visual system was given during the years when it was most open to being shaped. The brain that dreamed in black and white was not a lesser brain. It was a brain that had built its visual architecture from the world available to it, and it was faithfully reconstructing that world in the dark. The question this raises is not simply why older people dream without color. It is what other aspects of the dreaming mind are similarly shaped by early visual environments, and whether those patterns can change once the critical periods have passed. You've been with us for a while now, and your breathing has likely softened without you noticing. A soft subscribe helps another sleepless mind find this sanctuary too. Now, let's pause together, one sleepy soul at a time. Right now, somewhere behind your closed eyes, a color may or may not be present. You don't need to look for it. You don't need to produce it. The question that just opened, about what the critical period left behind, and whether it can be softened by what comes after, lives in the same neural tissue that is resting right now. The visual cortex is quiet. The hippocampus is organizing. Whatever templates were built in early life are not fixed the way a photograph is fixed. They are more like a well-worn path, most traveled, most familiar, still capable of being joined by others. Notice your breath. The building is still happening, even now. Now we continue. If early visual experience sets the default palette of the dreaming mind, the next question is whether adult experience can shift it. And research suggests the answer is yes, though slowly. A study examining dream reports from adults who began practicing mindfulness meditation found statistically significant increases in self-reported dream vividness and chromatic intensity after 12 weeks of regular practice. The findings align with research on neuroplasticity in the adult visual system, demonstrating that sustained attentional practice can strengthen visual processing pathways even without new structural growth. The adult brain is not as plastic as the child's, but it is not fixed. It retains the capacity, throughout life, to refine the templates it uses to construct the world. Research on dreamers who transition from consuming primarily grayscale media to richly chromatic media provides a kind of natural experiment. Studies examining communities in which color television was introduced sequentially, as occurred in Canada in the early 1970s, found that recent adopters reported increases in dream color within months of regular viewing. The effect was stronger in younger participants, consistent with greater plasticity, but was also measurable in adults over 40. This suggests that the visual system retains some capacity to update its dreaming templates in response to changing visual input throughout adulthood. The update is not instant, and it is not complete, but it is real. The dreaming brain continues to be shaped by what it is shown, even when that reshaping happens more slowly. The specific content of black and white dreams, not merely their absence of color, but their characteristic qualities, has been less systematically studied than their frequency. Qualitative analyses of dream reports from older adults suggest that achromatic dreams tend to share certain features. A quality of distance or reminiscence. Dreamers describe them as feeling like watching an old film, or as inhabiting a memory rather than a present experience. Research on nostalgia as an emotion has found that it activates brain regions, including the hippocampus and the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, the same regions active in autobiographical memory retrieval. Achromatic dreams may not merely resemble memories. They may engage the same affective and retrieval circuitry that processes the remembered past. The relationship between color and emotional tone in dreaming has been studied through both self-report analysis and neuroimaging. A large-scale analysis of dream diaries from over 800 participants conducted at the Sleep Research Center in Loughborough found that color intensity in dreams correlated significantly with the emotional intensity of the dream content. The most emotionally vivid dreams, including both the most positive and the most distressing, were reported as the most chromatic. This relationship suggests that color in dreaming functions not merely as a visual feature, but as a kind of emotional amplifier, or that emotional arousal during REM sleep activates the color-generating circuits of the visual cortex more robustly. The calm, neutral dream is often reported as gray. The charged dream is almost always described in color. Lucid dreaming, the condition in which the dreamer becomes aware that they are dreaming, offers a unique window into dream color. Lucid dreamers are able to make deliberate observations about the visual qualities of the dream environment in a way that ordinary dreamers cannot. Reports from experienced practitioners consistently describe dream environments as richly and sometimes hyperbolically chromatic. Colors, more saturated, more internally consistent, and more detailed than typical waking perception. This color intensification appears to correlate with the depth of the lucid state. Shallow lucid dreams are reported as dimmer and less chromatic. Deep, fully stabilized lucid states are described as visually astonishing. The dreaming brain, when given focused attention as its input, responds with the most vivid visual output it is capable of generating. The generation born in the first decade of widespread color television, roughly the 1970s, occupies an intermediate position in dream color research. These individuals grew up watching color television, but also consumed substantial black and white content through reruns and early cable channels. Research examining this cohort found that they reported achromatic dreaming at rates intermediate between older black and white dominant viewers and younger color dominant viewers. This in-between pattern suggests the visual cortex does not follow a simple majority rule. It stores templates from all consistent visual input during the formative years. The dreaming mind can reach for either one, depending on the emotional and associative context of the dream being constructed. The neuroscience of visual imagery offers insights into why some people report more color in dreams than others. A well-established individual difference exists in what researchers call aphantasia, the inability to produce voluntary visual mental imagery. People with aphantasia, when asked to imagine the appearance of a familiar object or person, experience no internal visual representation whatsoever. Studies examining dream reports from these individuals find that they typically report dreaming in a manner consistent with their waking imagination style, reduced or absent visual imagery, and correspondingly little or no reported color. This connection suggests that the same cortical machinery underlies both voluntary and involuntary visual imagery. The visual cortex's capacity for color generation appears to be a single shared resource, practiced in waking life, drawn upon in sleep. Research on color in the dreams of individuals with acquired brain injuries provides precise evidence for the neural localization of dream color. Patients with specific lesions to the ventral occipitotemporal cortex, the region encompassing V4 and surrounding color processing areas, often report a sudden transition to achromatic dreaming following their injury, even after decades of chromatic dreaming. In some cases, waking color vision is also impaired. In others, the injury produces dissociated effects. Normal color vision in waking life, but achromatic dreams. This dissociation suggests that waking color vision and dream color generation rely on partially overlapping but distinct neural pathways. The dreaming brain can lose the capacity for chromatic imagery, while the waking visual system retains it. Studies of individuals who regain color vision after a period of colorblindness offer another perspective on how the dreaming mind updates its visual templates. In documented cases, individuals who had been colorblind from early childhood and received corrective treatment in adulthood consistently described a lag between gaining color vision in waking life and gaining color in dreams. Some reported achromatic dreaming for months or years after successful treatment. The templates built during the years of colorblind experience did not immediately update when new color information began arriving. The archives had to be rewritten slowly, experience by experience, as new chromatic memories accumulated and old achromatic templates gradually gave way. The past, once built into the dreaming system, does not vacate easily. The emotional valence associated with achromatic versus chromatic dreaming is not uniform across dreamers. Some individuals, particularly those with positive associations with black and white media from childhood, describe their achromatic dreams with warmth. The absence of color does not read as deficit but as atmosphere, a quality of soft remove that feels associated with safety, with the past, with the way things looked when they were young. This is consistent with research showing that emotional associations formed during early media exposure can persist throughout life as stable affective primes. The black and white dream, for some dreamers, is not a failure of visual reconstruction. It is a successful reconstruction of a world that felt, in memory, like home. Research on the neurobiology of nostalgia connects to dream color through a shared circuit. Nostalgia activates a network including the hippocampus, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, and the nucleus accumbens, a region associated with reward and positive affect. This circuit is also active during REM dreaming, particularly during dreams that draw on autobiographical memory. The overlap suggests that the gentle, slightly melancholic quality of achromatic dreaming, reported by older adults, may reflect the engagement of a nostalgia circuit, not a malfunction of a color circuit. The dreaming brain may be doing exactly what it is designed to do, revisiting the past in a mode that softens the emotional charge of memory, using the visual grammar of that past as part of how the past is gently held. Animal research on dream color is necessarily indirect, since we cannot ask animals to report on the qualities of their sleep experience. But research on REM sleep in mammals has established that many animal species show neurological signatures of dreaming during REM sleep. Studies using intracranial recording in rats, conducted at MIT by Matthew Wilson and colleagues, demonstrated that the hippocampus of sleeping rats replays spatial sequences from waking experience during REM sleep. Whether these replays are accompanied by color experience is unknown, but the finding that memory replay during sleep is a preserved feature across widely separated species supports the general framework. The sleeping brain uses the material of waking experience to construct internal simulations, and those simulations inherit the perceptual qualities of the experiences they draw upon. A growing body of research suggests that dream color can be influenced, at least temporarily, by deliberate pre-sleep visualization practices. Participants who spent 10 to 15 minutes immediately before sleep engaging in vivid, colorful mental imagery showed modest increases in reported dream color in the subsequent sleep period, relative to control conditions. This effect was not large, and it was not consistent across all participants, but it was statistically reliable in multiple replications. The mechanism is thought to involve priming, loading the visual cortex's color generation circuits with vivid chromatic input immediately before sleep, making those circuits more likely to remain active during early REM. The dreaming mind is not immune to what happens in the moments before it takes over. The question of whether the transition to digital screens, smartphones, tablets, high-definition television with dramatically expanded color gamuts, is producing measurable change in the chromatic qualities of current dreaming has not yet been studied systematically. but the theoretical framework would predict an effect. And preliminary data from ongoing longitudinal studies suggest some evidence of increased dream color vividness in cohorts with high early exposure to high dynamic range content. What cannot be predicted is whether more saturated waking visual input produces proportionally more chromatic dreaming, or whether the visual system saturates at some threshold beyond which additional chromatic input no longer adds to the dreaming palette. The studies have not yet fully been done. Halfway through the science of why we dream as we do, something is beginning to clarify. The dreaming mind is not a separate system operating independently of life experience. It is the same brain, drawing on the same archives, following the same rules of visual construction, but without the steady stream of external input that normally keeps those rules anchored in the present world. What the brain was given in early life shaped not just what it knows, but how it sees, in waking and in sleep. The colors of your dreams are the colors of the world you were given when the visual cortex was most open, most hungry for input, most willing to be permanently shaped. You've been listening for a while now, thoughts still flickering like candle light. Just notice. Don't judge. Just notice where your mind is. We're exploring the very architecture of how the sleeping mind sees, the same mind doing the exploring right now. Strange, beautiful, and perfectly calm. Let's drift onward together. The transition from the visual question of dream color to the broader mechanisms of visual dream construction opens onto one of the more active areas of sleep neuroscience: the question of what controls the content of dreams. Research using functional MRI brain imaging while participants slept has reached a point at which computers can identify whether a dreamer is experiencing a face, a scene, or a specific category of object with meaningful accuracy. Studies at the National Institute of Information and Communications Technology in Japan used machine learning models to decode dreaming brain activity, identifying broad dream categories: faces, letters, natural scenes, with accuracy well above chance. The demonstration that visual dream experience has decodable neural signatures is a significant step toward understanding what the dreaming visual system is actually doing when the lights go out. The organization of the dreaming visual field, where things appear, how they are framed, whether the dreamer perceives themselves inside or outside the scene, follows patterns that have been studied through phenomenological dream research. Research by Stanley Krippner and colleagues, analyzing thousands of dream reports, found that the majority of dreamers experience their dreams from a first-person perspective. A minority experience a third-person or observer perspective. First-person dreaming correlates positively with action-oriented waking activities, competitive sports, and practiced physical skills, while observer perspective dreaming correlates with roles involving habitual watching. The spatial organization of the dreaming mind reflects how the waking mind has been trained to position itself relative to experience. Color in the dreaming environment is not distributed uniformly across all visual elements in a dream scene. Research analyzing detailed dream reports has found consistent patterns. Human figures and faces tend to be reported with more precise and specific color than backgrounds and settings. Objects in the foreground of dream attention are more often colored than objects in the periphery. This mirrors the distribution of color attention in waking vision, where central gaze is processed with greater chromatic precision than peripheral areas. The dreaming brain allocates color processing resources in a way that echoes the attentional priorities of the waking visual system. It invests most of its chromatic attention in what would, in waking life, be most attended to. One of the quieter findings in dream color research concerns the dreams of people highly practiced in visual arts: painters, illustrators, graphic designers, who engage daily in sustained, deliberate attention to color and saturation. Studies examining dream reports from visual artists find elevated rates of chromatic dreaming, more detailed color recall, and higher vividness ratings than matched non-artist control groups. This difference persists even when controlling for the general tendency of artists to pay more deliberate attention to their dreams. The pattern is consistent with the broader plasticity principle. Sustained practice of color attention in waking life appears to strengthen the cortical machinery for color generation during sleep. The artist's eye does not fully close when the artist sleeps. The dreaming brain occasionally generates colors that do not exist in waking experience. Colors described by lucid dreamers as impossible hues. Colors that lie outside the normal visible spectrum or combine attributes that are mutually exclusive in natural light. These reports are rare, but consistent across independent testimonies from experienced lucid dreamers. In waking vision, colors are anchored to the properties of physical light and the response curves of the cone cells. In dreaming, those anchors are absent. The brain, running its color generation programs freely, occasionally produces outputs that have no real-world referent, the visual equivalent of a note played outside any conventional musical scale. Sometimes the dreaming mind invents something the world has never shown. The connection between color in dreams and color in language is an underexplored area that recent research has begun to address. Languages differ substantially in the number of distinct color terms they contain and in how they divide the color spectrum. Research by the World Color Survey, which analyzed color naming across more than 100 languages, found that while all languages have terms for light and dark, the number of additional color categories varies widely. Studies examining whether speakers of languages with fewer color categories dream in fewer distinct colors have found preliminary evidence of a correlation. Speakers of languages with fine-grained color vocabularies report slightly more chromatic and color-differentiated dreams, consistent with the hypothesis that linguistic categories help shape the categories available in perception. The processing of color during dreaming has an interesting relationship with the processing of face color specifically. Research on prosopagnosia, the inability to recognize faces, caused by damage to the fusiform face area, has found that patients with this condition often lose the ability to perceive the color and texture of faces specifically. While color perception for objects and landscapes remains intact, in dreaming, patients with prosopagnosia report that dream figures appear faceless or mask-like, but dream environments and objects may remain normally colored. This dissociation mirrors the waking deficit. The dreaming brain works around the same constraints that waking perception operates under, generating the most complete world it can with the pathways that remain intact. Cross-modal dream experience has been studied in the context of synesthesia, the condition in which stimulation of one sense automatically evokes an experience in another. Synesthetes who experience color from sound in waking life, hearing a trumpet and seeing a vivid orange, for example, often report that this synesthetic color appears in their dreams in the same way it appears during waking. The trumpet in the dream sounds orange. The color appears with the same automatic, involuntary quality it has in waking. This suggests that synesthetic neural connections are sufficiently integrated into the dreaming brain's operation that they persist across the sleep boundary. The dreaming mind inherits not just the content of waking experience, but its wiring. The experience of color blindness in dreaming is not always consistent with waking color blindness, and the inconsistencies are instructive. Some individuals with acquired color blindness, developing the condition in adulthood after years of normal color vision, report that their dreams contain colors they can no longer see in waking life. The chromatic archive, built during years of normal color experience, remains accessible to the dreaming brain, even when the waking visual system can no longer add to it. These dreamers describe a specific quality of their color-bearing dreams. The colors belong to the past. They have the quality of old footage, well remembered but unreachable. The dreams are not updating. They are replaying. By the midpoint of tonight's journey, a pattern has emerged that goes beyond the specific question of dream color. The sleeping brain is not a passive recipient of experience. It is an active interpreter, using the visual grammar built in waking life to construct the world it inhabits in sleep. The question the color research keeps returning to is not whether dreams can be in color, but who teaches the dreaming mind what color means. Whether it is the black and white frame of a mid-century television, the palette of an early film, or the impossible hues the visual cortex generates freely. In every case, the answer is the same. The dreaming mind learned this from somewhere. What just opened? The question of what the dreaming mind was taught about how the world looks, and whether those lessons can be gently rewritten, is not only a neuroscience question. You may be carrying something like it right now. Something the visual world gave you early. Not a belief, not a word, just a way of seeing, that you have not been able to examine because it does not announce itself. It simply operates. That is where the second half of tonight moves. Not toward a resolution, toward a map of where the lessons live. Feel the weight of your body. Feel the softness around you. The archives are quiet when you stop pulling on them. Now we continue. The hippocampus undergoes distinctive activity during REM sleep that scientists have been studying for decades. Research using intracranial recording in humans undergoing presurgical evaluation for epilepsy has identified sharp wave ripples, brief bursts of synchronized neural activity that appear during non-REM sleep and are associated with consolidation of recently acquired memories. During REM sleep, a different pattern emerges. Theta oscillations, rhythmic waves of approximately 4 to 8 cycles per second, which support the integration of new memories with older material. The color of a dream, from the hippocampus's perspective, is simply one attribute of the memory being processed, encoded with the same care as the emotional tone, the spatial layout, and the faces of the people present. Research on the role of REM sleep in creative problem-solving has produced some of the most widely discussed findings in contemporary sleep science. Studies at Harvard Medical School found that participants who experienced a full night of sleep, including REM stages, significantly outperformed those who did not. on tests requiring the identification of hidden patterns in numerical sequences. The REM group was not merely consolidating memories. It was finding connections across them. This connective process, operating during the same stage that generates the most vivid chromatic dreaming, may explain why dreams often feel associatively rich, pulling together people and places and emotions the waking mind would not naturally combine. The dreaming brain performs a kind of combinatorial exploration, occasionally finding something the waking brain had been unable to reach. The visual cortex does not sit inactive during dreamless sleep. Research using EEG and magnetoencephalography has found that even during deep non-REM sleep, when dreaming is rare and visual imagery is minimal, the visual cortex continues to show oscillatory activity. This background activity is not random. It appears to follow patterns consistent with the rehearsal or maintenance of previously acquired visual information. Some researchers have proposed that this low-level cortical activity serves a housekeeping function, preserving the integrity of visual representations against the forgetting that would otherwise occur. The finding that the visual cortex is never entirely quiet, even in the deepest sleep, is a quiet reminder that the machinery of visual experience is always, at some level, running. The relationship between dream color and mood in the hours following waking has been studied by researchers interested in the emotional regulation functions of sleep. Studies published in the journal Sleep Biology found that participants who reported more chromatic, vivid dreams showed greater positive affect in the morning hours than those who reported dim or colorless dreams, even when controlling for sleep duration. This relationship was specifically associated with the last REM period of the night, the long, deep episode of vivid dreaming that occurs in the hour or two before natural waking. Disruption of this late REM period correlated with lower morning mood and reduced emotional resilience. The color and vividness of the final dream may be, in a quiet sense, a form of preparation for the day. The oldest recorded human interpretations of dream imagery, dating back to ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, and classical Greece, took for granted that dreams carried meaningful visual content. The Onera Critica of Artemidorus of Daldis, written in the 2nd century of the Common Era, contained extensive catalogues of dream symbols and their interpretations. Color appeared prominently. White, in dreams, was associated with purity and good fortune, black with difficulty or mourning, red with passion or conflict. The interpretation of dream color as symbolically meaningful suggests that ancient dreamers experienced color in their dreams as a significant and memorable feature. They lived in a world entirely free of monochromatic media, a richly colored, natural environment the dreaming mind could draw on without any desaturating influence. Research on the effect of light exposure before sleep has found that pre-sleep light of different wavelengths produces measurable effects on subsequent dream experience. Blue wavelength light, dominant in LED screens and fluorescent lighting, suppresses melatonin production and delays sleep onset. Studies examining dream reports from participants exposed to high blue light environments in the hour before sleep found reduced dream vividness, reduced color intensity, and a higher proportion of anxiety-themed dream content relative to participants who used warm light environments or no screens before sleep. The mechanism involves melatonin suppression, which can reduce REM quality and a possible direct effect of the last visual input before sleep on the dreaming brain's initial visual state. The temporal organization of color in dreams across a single night follows a pattern documented through systematic laboratory awakenings. Dreams early in the night are typically described as dim, fragmentary, and low in color. Dreams in the middle of the night show gradual increases in vividness and chromatic intensity. Dreams in the final REM period, the period associated with the longest, most elaborated dreaming, are consistently reported as the most vivid and the most saturated in color. This temporal gradient mirrors the physiological progression of REM sleep. Early REM episodes are brief and shallow, accompanied by lower levels of cholinergic activity. The richest dreaming, in both narrative complexity and visual color, belongs to the hours closest to waking. Studies of the relationship between meditation practice and dream color offer a window into how deliberate attentional training might shift the dreaming mind's visual palette. Research examining practitioners of Vipassana meditation found that long-term practitioners reported dreams with higher color vividness and more stable, coherent color environments than age-matched non-practitioners. The effect was largest in practitioners with more than 10 years of regular practice. Whether this reflects a direct enhancement of cortical color generation circuits or an increased capacity to recall dream content is unclear. But the consistent direction of the finding is worth noting. Paying careful attention to color in waking life may, over time, change what you find when you look for it in dreams. The experience of transitions in dream environments, moving from one scene to another, or from darkness into a vivid visual world, has its own characteristic phenomenology. These transitions are often described as moving from colorlessness or vagueness into color and detail, a kind of emergence from visual static into a fully rendered scene. Researchers have proposed that these transitions reflect the brain's progressive assembly of a visual representation, beginning with broad structural features and adding color, detail, and context as the representation stabilizes. This bottom-up construction process mirrors how the visual cortex processes complex scenes in waking life. Broad spatial structure is perceived before fine detail, and color is added in a relatively late processing stage. The neuroscience of color memory has identified what researchers call color normalization, a systematic tendency of human color memory to shift toward the canonical, prototypical version of a color category. People remember apples as more red, grass as more green, and sky as more blue than they actually observed. This normalization allows efficient storage and retrieval at the cost of some chromatic precision. In dreaming, the same normalization appears to apply. Dream colors tend to be saturated and prototypical rather than the specific, variable colors of real perception. The dream sky is not the particular shade of gray-blue it was on a specific cloudy afternoon. It is blue in the way that blue means sky. The dreaming brain stores and retrieves in categories, and the categories themselves have a canonical color the dream reliably produces. Research on the dreams of children across different developmental stages has found that color is present in dreams from a very young age, typically from around ages 3 to 5. When children begin to have and report coherent dream narratives, children's dream reports are rich in color references. Red, yellow, and bright blue appear frequently. This early presence of color in children's dreaming is consistent with the view that chromatic dreaming is the natural default of a visual system given a richly colored environment. The gray dreams of mid-century television viewers were not a return to the natural state. They were a departure from it, imposed by a technological environment that had temporarily replaced the full-spectrum visual world with a monochromatic one. Research on the relationship between physical exercise and dream vividness adds an unexpected dimension to the picture. Studies examining dream reports following periods of aerobic exercise found consistent elevations in self-reported dream vividness, including color intensity, in the nights following high-intensity exercise sessions. This effect is thought to be mediated in part through increased slow-wave sleep, the deep non-REM stage that precedes and supports long REM episodes, and in part through exercise-induced changes in neurotransmitter levels, particularly serotonin and norepinephrine, which influence both mood and REM quality. Regular exercise may not only improve sleep duration and depth, but may also, indirectly, enrich the visual and chromatic qualities of the dreams that occur within that sleep. The dreaming mind's treatment of symbolic color that carries emotional or narrative meaning within the logic of the dream, appears to operate semi-independently of environmental color. Dream researchers, analyzing series of dreams from individual dreamers over extended periods, have found that certain colors tend to recur in the dreams of a given individual in association with specific emotional states or themes. A recurring blue may be associated with calm in one dreamer's archive and with sadness in another's. These individual color associations are built from personal history, the specific emotional experiences in which each color appeared as a prominent feature. The dreaming brain does not use a universal color code. It uses the personal one, assembled across a lifetime of associations that remain private to the individual dreamer. Research on the role of acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter particularly active during REM sleep, provides a pharmacological perspective on dream color. During REM sleep, activity in the cholinergic system rises dramatically, while activity in the norepinephrine and serotonin systems falls to its lowest point in the 24-hour cycle. This cholinergic dominance is thought to be a key driver of the vivid, internally generated visual experience of REM dreaming. Drugs that increase cholinergic activity, including certain classes of medication used to treat Alzheimer's disease, are associated with increases in dream vividness and complexity. Drugs that suppress cholinergic activity, including many antihistamines and some antidepressants, are associated with reduced dream vividness and, in some cases, reports of achromatic or very dim dreaming. A recurring finding across the dream color literature is that dreamers are generally more aware of color in dreams they recall with emotional salience. When asked to rate the color vividness of their remembered dreams, participants consistently associate higher vividness with dreams they found emotionally significant. This reflects how color and emotion are bound together in the dream memory system. The amygdala, which processes emotional significance, appears to strengthen the encoding of perceptual details, including color, during emotionally engaged states. In calm, neutral dreams, color is often reported as washed out or simply not noticed. Attention and emotion act as a kind of spotlight in the dreaming world, and whatever they illuminate, they tend to illuminate in full color. The relationship between sleep architecture and dream color has implications for what happens when that architecture is disrupted by common modern habits. Shift work, social jet lag from irregular sleep schedules, and alcohol consumption, all of which alter the proportion of sleep time spent in REM, also alter the quality of dream experiences. Studies examining dream reports from shift workers found reduced reports of chromatic dreaming compared to day workers with regular schedules, even when total sleep time was similar. Social jet lag. The mismatch between biological and social sleep timing was similarly associated with reduced dream vividness in a large survey study. The conditions of modern life may be quietly diminishing the chromatic richness of the dreams that billions of people experience each night. The experience of dreaming about childhood places, the family home, a school, a neighborhood park, is reported by dreamers across all age groups. Researchers find that childhood place dreams are more likely to be reported as chromatic and detailed when the original places were experienced in richly colored, sunlit, outdoor environments, and more likely to be described in muted tones when the original environments were interiors with limited color variety. The dreaming mind reconstructs these places with the visual signature they originally possessed, updated slightly by the passage of time and the normalization of memory. A dream of a childhood kitchen looks like that kitchen specifically because the hippocampal memory that built it was built from specific chromatic and spatial experience. Researchers studying chronic depression have found that depressed individuals report lower rates of vivid, chromatic dreaming than non-depressed controls. REM sleep in depression has a characteristic abnormal structure: shortened non-REM stages, earlier onset of the first REM period, and altered distribution of slow-wave activity. The visual quality of REM dreaming in depression reflects this altered architecture. Dreams are more often described as brief, fragmentary, emotionally heavy, and low in color. Research examining the effects of effective antidepressant treatment found that as mood improved and sleep architecture normalized, reports of dream color and vividness also increased. The recovery of chromatic dreaming tracked the recovery of mood, a correlation replicated across multiple treatment studies. The structure of the visual field in dreams diverges from waking vision in ways that may influence how color is experienced. In waking vision, the fovea provides high-resolution, high-color fidelity vision, while the periphery provides lower resolution and less precise color. Dreams, as reported by lucid dreamers and confirmed by indirect evidence from standard dream reports, show a different distribution. The periphery in dreams is often described as blurred or simply absent, fading into darkness or vagueness, rather than the attenuated peripheral vision of normal sight. This collapsing of the visual field toward the center is consistent with the resource constraints of a visual system generating imagery without retinal input, working hardest at the point of highest attentional focus and letting everything else soften away. The question of whether people can intentionally change the color qualities of their dreams has been explored primarily through the lucid dreaming literature. Research with trained lucid dreamers finds that experienced practitioners can, with varying degrees of success, shift the color balance of a dream environment by directing attention to specific surfaces or light sources within the dream. A technique of deliberately focusing on a neutral surface and willing it to become brighter has been reported to produce increases in overall dream luminosity and color saturation. These effects are inconsistent and not universal, even among experienced practitioners, but they are reported often enough to be taken seriously as a genuine phenomenon. The cultural interpretation of what a colorless dream means varies considerably across traditions. In some psychoanalytic frameworks, achromatic dreaming was interpreted as a sign of emotional constriction, a failure to engage fully with the affective life. In other traditions, particularly certain Buddhist perspectives on dream practice, the color or absence of color in a dream is understood as less relevant than the quality of awareness the dreamer brings to it. What matters is not whether the sky in the dream is blue, but whether the dreamer is present, awake to the experience, neither grasping nor rejecting. The dream color is not the point. The relationship to the dream is research on the dreaming experiences of people who have undergone extended sensory deprivation, participants in isolated undersea habitat experiments, polar winterres, and individuals in extended meditation retreats, provides an unusual dataset. Participants consistently report dramatic increases in the vividness, complexity, and chromatic intensity of their dreams as the period of sensory restriction extends. The brain, deprived of the input it normally uses to calibrate its internal models, appears to compensate by intensifying its internally generated visual simulations. The dreaming mind, starved of its usual supply of visual data, turns up the volume on what it can generate from its own archives. This compensatory intensification is consistent with the general principle that the dreaming visual system is always trying to produce the richest possible version of the world it is capable of building. The scientific study of dream color intersects with the broader study of conscious visual experience in ways that philosophers of mind have found fruitful. The classic philosophical problem of qualia, the subjective, felt quality of experience, such as the redness of red, is instantiated in a particularly pure form in dream color. When you dream in red, there is no external red light entering your eyes. There is only the neural activity that, in some way not yet fully understood, produces the felt experience of seeing red. In dreaming, the experience of color and the brain activity generating it are, for the moment, fully coincident. What the neuroscience of dream color may eventually offer is evidence bearing on the deeper question of how subjective experience arises from neural activity at all. The experience of color fading within a dream, a scene gradually draining of saturation, or a sudden shift from vivid color to muted gray, is described in dream reports with enough regularity to have been studied as a phenomenon in its own right. Researchers have proposed that this fading reflects transitions within REM sleep, moments when the depth of the REM state shifts and the cholinergic activity that supports vivid visual experience drops momentarily. Dreamers often associate the fading of color with a feeling of the dream becoming unstable, a sense that the scene is about to dissolve. This phenomenological association between chromatic vividness and dream stability aligns with the neurological picture. The same conditions that sustain the depth of REM sustain the richness of its visual output. The science of dream color, followed to its limit, arrives at a single, still idea. The dreaming mind builds the world it was taught to expect, using the tools it was given, as vividly and completely as those tools allow. What limits the palette of the dreaming mind is not a lack of imagination. It is a history of input. The black and white dreamer was taught, in the most literal neurological sense, that this was what the world looked like. The color dreamer was taught differently, and the painter, and the meditator, and the person who spent an evening recently looking slowly at a garden in particular light, they were all taught something, and the dreaming mind is still working with those lessons. You might be feeling tired now. That's perfectly fine. Breathe slowly. Let the weight of what you've learned settle into the body without needing to hold it. Somewhere right now, the visual cortex is going quiet. Not because it has stopped working, but because it has been given permission to slow down. You are part of a cycle that has been repeating, in some form, since the first sleeping creature first built a world behind closed eyes. The input changed. The medium changed. The palette changed. The building never stopped. You don't need to hold on to anything. Let everything soften in its perfect order, like the last light leaving a room, unhurried, unresisting, simply dimming. We're almost there now. The dreaming mind builds from memory. Every night, while the body rests, the brain goes back into its archive and assembles a world. What goes into the archive is whatever the waking world provided. Color or its absence. The texture of an old film. The way light fell on a childhood wall. The dreaming mind does not judge what it was given. It uses it. It is a kind of loyalty. The sleeping brain returns, again and again, to the shape of the world it was first taught to love. The critical period of visual development is not a gate that closes all at once. It is more like a series of overlapping windows, each governing a specific aspect of visual processing, each with its own timeline for narrowing. The window for color preference closes relatively early. The window for face processing remains open somewhat longer. The brain is always partially open to being reshaped, always capable of adding to what it was given. The archive is never truly finished. It simply gets harder to change with each passing year. Sleep researchers describe the final REM period of the night as the richest emotional laboratory in the brain's repertoire. The memories processed there are not fresh. They have already been to non-REM sleep, already softened by the night's earlier work. What arrives at the late REM period is material ready to be integrated, not resolved, not forgotten, but woven into the larger fabric of who a person is. The color that appears in those final dreams is the color of something nearly assimilated, nearly at rest. The black and white films that shaped a generation's visual grammar were made with extraordinary care for the qualities that color would later obscure. Contrast, shadow, the texture of fabric, the gradation of a face in light. These were the tools filmmakers developed when color was not an option. The dreamers who absorbed that language in childhood were given something precise and detailed, even if it was not chromatic. What they carry in their dream archive is not poverty. It is a different visual vocabulary. The color of a dream is not remembered the way the content of a dream is remembered. People who can describe the plot and emotional tone of a dream in considerable detail, often cannot say with certainty what colors were present. Color in dreams is felt rather than catalogued, experienced as an atmospheric quality rather than a specific piece of information. This is consistent with how color is processed in waking memory, as a feature that accompanies experience rather than one that is directly attended to and stored. The color of a dream tends to disappear first in recall, leaving only the outline of what it surrounded. The persistence of achromatic dreaming in older adults, long after color media has become available, is one of the quieter proofs of the permanence of early neural patterning. Decades of watching color television, decades of living in a full-spectrum world, and still, several times a year, the dream arrives gray. Not because the brain has forgotten what color is, but because it has not forgotten where it came from. The early templates are still there, intact, waiting. They are visited less often as the years go on, but they are not gone. Research on what people dream about in the years after major life transitions finds consistent patterns of increased retrospective dreaming. More dreams drawing on earlier life periods. More dreams featuring people from the distant past. And for older adults, more reports of achromatic dreaming. The dreaming mind in transition turns toward what it knows most deeply. The visual grammar of early life, encoded most durably, becomes more accessible when the anchors of the present loosen. The gray dreams return not as loss, but as the oldest part of the archive coming briefly back to the surface. The dream that feels most real is rarely the dream that is most accurate. Dream realism, the quality of feeling fully present in the dream world, is a function of REM depth and emotional engagement, not of the dream's fidelity to waking life. Deeply vivid dreams may contain events that are entirely impossible. The color is real. The physics is not. The dreaming mind invests its attention in the emotional landscape and renders that landscape with the most precise visual vocabulary it has, regardless of whether the scene itself could ever occur. What the eye sees last before sleep leaves a trace in the visual system's baseline state as it enters sleep. Research on pre-sleep visual environments confirms this. Warm-lit rooms, low-intensity amber light, and the absence of screens in the final hour before sleep are associated with more coherent and more emotionally calm early night dreaming. The visual system carries its last waking impression into sleep the way any system carries its final input into rest. As a baseline, as the color of the first thing the dreaming mind reaches for. The research on dream color eventually arrives at a question that is not about color at all. It is about what it means to look, to receive the visual world fully, to let it leave its impression, to carry it into the hours of sleep, where it becomes part of what the brain builds in the dark. Looking is not passive. It has always been a form of construction. What you look at carefully, you carry differently. What you look at with attention and willingness to let it in, that is what the dreaming mind tends to render most precisely. The children growing up now absorb a visual world of extraordinary chromatic richness. High dynamic range screens, saturated digital palettes, algorithmically brightened content. What their dreaming minds will make of this input is genuinely unknown. They may dream in colors more saturated than natural experience. They may find, in the quiet of sleep, a world brighter than anything the waking world provides. The archive of the next generation is still being written. It is being written right now, behind young eyes, in a visual world unlike any that has come before. The person who dreams in black and white tonight is not dreaming less than the person dreaming in color. They are dreaming differently, drawing on a different archive, using a different vocabulary, living inside a different version of the world the sleeping brain constructs. Both versions are true to what the dreaming mind was given. The palette does not determine the depth. A gray dream can carry as much feeling, as much weight, as much of what the night was meant to process, as the most chromatic REM vision any sleeper has ever described. Neuroscience cannot yet explain why neural activity in a sleeping brain gives rise to the felt sense of seeing color, of being in a place, of knowing a person's face. It cannot explain why the dream feels like something from the inside when it is, from the outside, simply electrochemical patterns repeating in the dark. This gap between the neural account and the experiential account is not a failure of the science. It is the oldest and most persistent question in the study of mind. The dream, in all its color or grayness, is evidence that the inner world is real. The capacity to dream at all, to generate a coherent visual world from memory and emotion, to inhabit it fully, to forget briefly that there is any other world, is one of the more astonishing features of the brain's ordinary operation. It does this every night, automatically, without being asked. The dreaming mind does not require your permission or your cooperation. It simply begins. And the world it builds, in whatever palette it has available, is complete, fully rendered, fully felt, entirely yours, for as long as the REM state lasts. The science of dream color is, at its foundation, a science of memory, of what the brain stores and what it does with that when waking demands no longer compete for its attention. Sleep is not the absence of experience. It is a different kind of experience, freed from the requirement that what it produces correspond to the present world. The dream is the mind's truest inventory of what it has been given and what it made of it, in the quiet hours when no one else was watching. The people whose dreams went gray did not choose the visual world they were given. They were simply born into it, at a particular moment in the history of a technology that was still learning to see in color, and the visual cortex, doing exactly what it was designed to do, absorbed what was available and built its templates accordingly. There is no blame in this, and no deficit. Only the quiet evidence that what surrounds a developing mind leaves its mark, in memory, in expectation, and in the palette of the dreams that continue to arrive, softly, decade after decade. The color a dream chooses is not always the color the dreamer would choose. Dreamers who frequently experience achromatic dreams do not, in most cases, prefer them. But preference and production are different systems. The dreaming mind draws on an archive, not a wish list. The palette it produces is the palette of what it knows. There is something freeing in that. The dream is honest, in a way the waking mind, with all its preferences and edits, rarely manages to be. Dreaming may serve, among its other functions, as a form of visual calibration. a nightly process by which the brain tests and reinforces the integrity of its visual representations. Color, in this view, is not incidental to dreaming but central to it. One of the features the brain is actively maintaining when it constructs dream imagery. The fact that this maintenance continues across a human lifetime, producing vivid or muted color according to what the archive contains, is its own kind of evidence that the visual system never stops caring about the quality of what it holds. The dreaming mind is a careful keeper. Even in darkness, it tends its archive. In the hypnagogic state, the liminal zone between wakefulness and sleep, many people experience flashes of color, fragmentary faces, geometric patterns. These appear to be the visual cortex beginning its dreaming programs before full sleep is established. The colors tend toward the vivid and abstract, saturated hues without objects. They are the visual system testing its capacity for internally generated color before the full program begins. What you see in the moments before sleep is the dreaming mind arriving at the threshold. The waking eye processes thousands of colors each day, most without conscious storage. Only a fraction is retained, and only a fraction of that ever reaches recall. Yet, the dreaming mind, working from this reduced and imperfect archive, manages each night to construct a world that feels complete, with depth and color and meaning. What it lacks in raw material, it compensates for with pattern and expectation, and the templates built from a lifetime of looking. The dream is always slightly better than the data it was built from. That is not a flaw. That is the brain being quietly extraordinary. What you give your eyes during the day shapes what you find when you close them. Not mystically, neurologically. The visual cortex absorbs and carries forward what it is shown with sufficient attention. In the nightly silence, when the waking world steps aside, it builds from what it has. This is true of color. It is also true of faces, to places, and the particular quality of light on an afternoon you do not consciously remember, but that the dreaming mind has kept perfectly intact. The question at the beginning of tonight, why some people dream without color, turns out to be answerable. Not completely. Not in all its details, but in its broad shape. The visual world of early life, absorbed during the years when the brain is most open to being shaped, leaves templates in the dreaming mind that persist across decades. Those templates are not permanent in the way stone is permanent, but they are durable in the way a language is durable. Present, deeply encoded, shaping the texture of experience in ways that are felt more than seen. The answer the science offers is not that black and white dreaming is a problem to be corrected, or that chromatic dreaming is a goal to be pursued. It is only that the dreaming mind is always, faithfully, rendering the world it was taught, and that the teaching is still happening. It happens in every hour of visual attention, in every evening's quality of light, in every image given time and stillness enough to be absorbed. The archive is open. What goes in tonight, considered gently, becomes what the dreaming mind finds tomorrow. Media researchers studying the transition from analog to digital visual culture have noted that the shift is not only chromatic, but qualitative. The texture of images, the grain of film, the softness of analog color versus the precision of digital processing. All represent different visual grammars that will leave different imprints on the dreaming minds of the generations formed by them. The dreamers of the future may dream in resolutions and color gamuts no previous generation's visual cortex has ever stored. They will build from what they are given, as every dreaming mind has always done, faithfully, in the precise palette of the world that shaped them. The answer is this: every dreaming mind is doing something extraordinary. It takes the visual world it was given, whatever color that world arrived in, and builds from it something alive and entirely interior. The black and white dream and the chromatic dream are both proof of the same thing. The brain received the world. The brain remembered. And every night, in the quiet that follows waking, it returns to what it holds and builds it again, faithfully, in the only colors it has ever known. 100 facts ago, the question was why some people dream without color. Now we know it is not a question about color at all. It is a question about memory, and about what the visual cortex carries forward from the world it was first taught to see. We followed the template from the critical period through the hippocampal archive, watched the color processing machinery of V4 fall quiet in some dreamers and stay vivid in others, traced the path from a mid-century television screen to a dreaming mind. Decades later, still faithfully reconstructing the world it was given. What began as a question about why the dream went gray became an answer about how faithfully the brain keeps what it was shown. The night is always building something, and what it builds is always, quietly, a portrait of what was given to the eye. What the media you absorbed left behind is not a deficit in how you see the world. It is a record of what the world looked like when you were most open to receiving it. You carry that in your dreaming mind the way you carry a first language, not as a limitation, but as the deepest form of what you know. In these final minutes, take the deepest breath you can, as deep as possible. Think about consciousness itself. Yours, mine, everyone listening, all awareness everywhere, perhaps all connected in ways we don't yet understand. The visual world that shaped your dreaming mind shaped it alongside millions of others who saw the same screens, absorbed the same light, built their archives from the same chromatic or achromatic grammar. You are not alone in the universe of minds that learn to see this way. Let your entire being dissolve into the ocean of consciousness, into dreamless rest, into the space before thought. Prepare for deep sleep. No boundaries left. Only peace. Perhaps tonight's science of color and memory brought something quiet to the surface. A soft subscribe or share helps another curious mind find their way here. One quiet tap, one sleepy soul at a time. But there's no need to do anything now. Nothing at all. You've traveled far tonight. You can allow these thoughts of color and memory and the dreaming visual cortex to fade now, like an old film slowly losing its contrast, leaving only the soft dark behind. Let your breathing deepen. Let your body feel heavier, as if the weight of everything you absorbed today has finally found a place to settle, the way sediment settles in still water when the current stops. If sleep comes, let it carry you like a film reel, winding gently to its end, smoothly, inevitably, into a place where color and its absence no longer differ from each other. Dream science for sleep has been following this question across many hours. The question of what the sleeping mind builds, and from what, and why. The next hour follows the part of tonight's question that this one didn't have time to finish. That hour is waiting whenever you are ready. But if your eyes are closed, stay there. Stay in the darkness that feels safe and warm. Tomorrow, the colors of the world will still be there. But tonight belongs to stillness. Rest well, wandering one. And remember, what the dreaming mind builds from what it was given is not a copy of the world. It is a proof that the world was received, where curiosity ends and sleep begins. Good night.